The latest Pompey news, updates every day from the Pompey Sound news desk.
As Pompey ease themselves back into the routine of preparation for a looming championship match, players and staff are sharply conscious that the next game comes on a Friday, not a Saturday, a piece of scheduling which effectively robs them of 24 hours preparation. And even the preparations that took place on Saturday and Sunday were subject to an hour lost through clocks going forward overnight on Sunday. Some would say small matters, but when small matters pile up, they become big matters. Besides, with Pompey's next fixture taking place on Friday, after that, with just 2 full days preparation time, namely the weekend of Saturday the 4th and Sunday the 5th, it's on to the 6-pointer against Oxford, which kicks off at 12:30 in the afternoon. The first job on the list as the players assemble after a mini break to recharge their batteries is a health and fitness check on the players, especially those who are nursing everything from niggles to full-blown ailments. Naturally, Pompey will be keeping news about those developments close to their chest. All eyes and ears are out for any snippets on Ebo Adams. But Coach John Messino is looking for good news on a number of his players.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely the case. Thank you for that. News is news, even if it's obvious. It still has to be reported, and those are the facts, and just the facts, and all of the facts that are available. We may not know until 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon whether Ebo Adams has recovered from whatever it was that affected his knee at the very end of the QPR game. And of course, we hope that he's fit. The fact that he might not play doesn't necessarily mean that he's not fit. If you listen to Steve Bone's excellent podcast, at the end he is predicting his team for Norwich, and he's predicting a second 11, effectively. And the reason for that, he says, is because he wants to save all the fitness and guts that are in his first team for the much more important Oxford game. And there's a good deal of intelligent thinking there. I just wonder whether John Messino is prepared to go out on a limb again, having gone out on a bit of a limb, swapping Swift and Adams against QPR and sticking with it through the game, whether he's prepared to go out on a similar limb against Norwich. What we do know for sure is that we're hanging on the fitness reports about Ebo Adams, and we at Pompey Sound wonder whether that's a wise thing. We have got more than 20 other footballers who are, well, most of them are rock solid championship performers, and when they gel, then we can go to places like Millwall and Charlton and get a damn good performance and a damn good result. So it doesn't all hang on Ebo Adams. It would be wrong of us to even begin to think that, especially if that thinking affects the players, because if it turns out that he does have an injury which is going to sideline him for Norwich, for Oxford, possibly for until the rest of the season, then we are going to have to get on with what we've got. And we have to remember that what we've got is good enough to go and stuff people like, as I said, Charlton and Millwall at their gaff, and therefore when they stitch it together, they're good enough.
As the sharp end of the season heaves into view, Pompey find they face an increasing number of pressure points, one of which is the sudden appearance of TV pundits who are U-turning on the club's prospects. Pompey Sound says, it's not the pundits' fault they have to make predictions, or that they are frequently mistaken. It's that they are always predictable, they predict the obvious, and they hunt in packs. Following Pompey's result at QPR, rather than analyse the breach between the game and the result, a whole slew of former players who aren't up to management and probably envy John Messino have gathered together to write Pompey off. Tommy Smith, himself a former Yeoman Championship defender, is now saying on Sky, "I'll be honest with you, that one against QPR was a real bad one, a real damaging one. You're in that situation you're in, and you need that soul and fight in a relegation scrap. When I saw QPR thumped 4-0 by Borough a few weeks ago, they looked like they were in mid-table and on the beach. So to beat Portsmouth 6-1 from a Portsmouth point of view is a really, really bad one in a relegation fight. I'm a little bit concerned for Portsmouth, I'll be totally honest with you. I think Portsmouth and Oxford are the teams who will go down. I just think the other teams have those moments and bits of quality. I don't see Portsmouth and Oxford having that. So I think they will be the two who go down." Andy Hinchcliffe also on Sky yesterday, "I look at those last 4 games, and Leicester have Portsmouth to play. If Portsmouth win that one, and it's a big if, they have Hull, Millwall and Blackburn on the final day. If Leicester are to go down, it could be Portsmouth who save themselves. And it could be on goal difference. It's that tight, but I'd probably go with Portsmouth, Oxford and Sheffield Wednesday.
So the question after hearing that item is, what do we think of TV football pundits? What do we think of their analysis of the game, before the game, the build-up, half-time, the stuff that they say after the game? That's one thing. The other thing they're often asked to do is to comment on the future, to offer their opinion on who they think is going to win whatever tournament, whatever league, who they think is going to suffer, who they think is going to be relegated. And quite a lot of attention at the moment is being placed on the relegation battle at the foot of the Championship, and that's where we are. And at the moment, because of the 6-1 defeat by QPR, and let's remember that that is officially now a freak result, that the stats say that it is a freak result. It's never happened before that a side should have just 6 touches inside the opposition box and score 6 goals. Never happened before. Nowhere near it. So it's a freak result. And the performance just wasn't that bad. It wasn't a 6-1 defeat. But the pundits, they seize on that and they decide to hop onto the bandwagon of, to be honest. They always say, to be honest, don't they? To be honest. And then they say the bleeding obvious. I didn't say bleeding, I said blooming. They state the blooming obvious, which is that Portsmouth have something like a 50-50 chance of staying up. That's about it, all right? But because those odds have got sharper as a result of Pompey being on a bit of a bad run, then they are hedging their bets and they are going with what they think the most likely outcome is. Not what they think is going to be the outcome, but what looks like the likely outcome, because part of it is they don't want the correspondence. They don't want the social media. They don't want people criticising them, supporters of clubs that they have predicted will go down. If those clubs don't go down, they don't want the maelstrom of bad press that they're going to get from fans and basically, members of the public criticising them, possibly quite ferociously, for ever doubting their heroes. So those things, that they are all the pieces of nutrition that a pundit needs to take into account, needs to digest in order to come up with what is often a tentative prediction, a prediction which is simply more likely than not, but they enshroud it and they enshrine it by saying, to be honest. So personally, I and we at Pompey Sound completely discount those predictions that we're going down.
Pompey CEO Andy Cullen is talking about Pompey's future. He's confident the club's future is safe under the Eisners and welcomes the arrival of an independent football regulator, whose role is to rein in some of the dangerous excesses of many clubs, particularly in the Championship. Cullen is all for clubs being able to sustain themselves within their own budgets funded by real income, namely gate receipts, broadcasting fees and merchandise. He's fearful for clubs whose owners promise huge loans to spend on transfers and inflated wages before folding and taking the club down with them. He says, "It depends on your definition of sustainability. Sustainability can mean different things to many people. For some people it will mean break even, and clearly that's not going to happen anytime soon in the Championship. With the new licensing regime from the independent football regulator, there will be a licensing regime which will be introduced later this autumn. What the IFR is looking at is your financial model going forward. Have you got enough liquidity in your football club to meet the commitment you're making in certain areas, particularly on players? Where is the cash coming from? Can you suffer a shock, which could be obviously relegation in terms of impact? Are your contracts in such a way that you can continue to fund? Another is if the owner loses interest. We have seen that at clubs where an owner does have a go and sometimes hasn't achieved the objective they have set out and get themselves into trouble. Then that owner doesn't have the appetite to continue to fund those losses they have committed over a number of years. And the third could be the owner funding being cut off. Again, we have seen that at some clubs recently where the owners haven't traditionally been able to finance a football club. We are sustainable because we have owners that are putting sufficient funds into the football club and increasing funds into the football club to enable it to move forward in a way which doesn't put the football club at risk. Those are two measures for sustainability. One is knowing you've got the funds to be able to put the money in, and more importantly, you are not putting the club at financial risks should any shocks happen. This is part of the succession planning. It gives us a sustainable future going forward in the event that anything untoward happens to any of our owners.
Well, if nobody minds me saying this, then I'm going to say this. And actually, I'll say it if somebody minds. And it is this. Michael Eisner is about as good a business person as the Western world has seen in the last 50 years. And Andy Cullen is an extremely successful CEO of a number of businesses, and he's made them work. And I was talking to some Norwich fans earlier in the week who were telling me that they have an enormous debt to Andy Cullen for how he has turned the club's Norwich, how he has turned Norwich's fortunes around in the time that he was in charge. So these are extremely competent business people. And in the case of Andy Cullen, I'm not saying he doesn't know a great deal about football. And Michael Eisner says he now knows and understands around about half of the rules, which is refreshing honesty, isn't it? But the simple fact of the matter is I don't think that Andy Cullen is a football fan. I think he likes and respects the business that he's in, but I don't think as a boy, I must ask him, occasionally bump into him behind the scenes because he makes himself very visible on match day in and around Fratton Park, everywhere. In the fan zone, talking to fans, you name it. He's bumping shoulders with people and answering any questions that they want to ask him, which is fantastic. So I'm just interested in asking him whether he was a football fan as a boy or a young man, or indeed now. And does he understand the passion that football fans have for wanting their team to win every game? Because that's what we want. We are very interested in remaining solvent. We are very interested in having a sustainable club and a sustainable financial plan. Very interested in that because we want the club to be here next season. We know what it's like to suspect that it's possible that our club might not be in existence next season and the season after that and forever. So no, we don't want that. But we focus our attention entirely on, really, we do. I mean 100% on what happens on the pitch. Because we want to go home from a game or get the result off our phones or whatever, if it's an away game and we couldn't make it, and discover that we've got something out of the game, preferably a healthy win at home, and maybe nick a point away. You know, that's always good enough. We want to know that we've got those things so that we can enjoy the rest of the weekend. If we're lucky enough to have a weekend yawning ahead of us and the game hasn't been shifted to a Sunday. But that's for another time. What I'm saying here is that the Eisners and Andy Cullen need to get their heads around the fact that it's just not a powerful enough argument to say that Pompey are financially sustainable. We're pleased about it as fans, but not particularly pleased about it. What we're pleased about is the ball going in the net at their end, and then again, and then again. And then the final whistle goes and we stand up and we cheer. That's why we love our game. That's why we love our club. That's what we want to happen. So whilst it's important to be sustainable and have a good financial plan, it's also even more important to have a more than sustainable football team who are delivering that to the club and to the fans.